Blood on Michael's hands and the signs of struggle found inside Amie's bathroom made it clear that this was a crime scene, and Michael is the prime suspect.
You still hear screaming?
I still heard screaming. When I was leaving, I yelled up there, "Hey, mother!" because I wanted her to think I was coming upstairs, so maybe he'd like stop and run.
However, detectives began to have doubts. The further they investigated, the clearer it became that there was more to this crime than meets the eye. And as they dig deeper, they uncover that Amie had a history of troubled relationships and many people had it out for her. But one relationship stood out from the rest, one that was plagued with stalking, violence, and abuse.
I have so much I need to say. Please give me a chance to just say it, please.
At 1:11 a.m. on February 15th, 2020, 911 received a harrowing call from Amie's roommate.
I want to reduce the operator 434.
Yep. Somebody just attacked my roommate. We're at 2086 Down Street. Find out.
Okay, how was he assaulted? What happened?
It's me. I don't know. I was downstairs. I heard screaming. Please get a cop here.
Okay, and this is who's screaming inside?
Can't think right now. Amie Harwick.
I mean, who is she to you, sir?
She's my roommate.
Okay. Is she screaming for help?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see anything?
No.
Okay, so
No, I heard her screaming, and I heard her being...
All right, so I'm going to send out that somebody's screaming, okay? Since you didn't see anything. You don't know if she's being attacked. You're not sure.
Yes, I know she's being attacked. I heard her got thrown to the ground.
Suspicious, finding out whether he's guilty comes second. The first priority is to ensure Amie's survival, whose condition was worsening by the second. Her pulse was nearly non-existent, and she was rushed to a nearby hospital, where it was determined that she had sustained many serious injuries since dropping about 20 feet from the balcony, including lacerations to her liver and brain damage. And despite the best attempts from doctors, Amie Harwick was soon pronounced dead. The syringe filled with nicotine, Amie's injuries before the fall, and no missing items. These was already a suspicious individual, as his frequent cannabis use led officers to believe that he had at least some knowledge of drugs and could be behind the nicotine syringe. But more telling was the fact that his arms were covered in blood and scratches, which made him look even more guilty. So to get to the bottom of this, Michael was brought in for an interview where he would stay adamant about his innocence. Returning home, he heard screams from inside the house and then shouted loudly to scare off the potential attacker. He then entered the home to find the front door open and Amie Harwick's body on the ground. He immediately called 911 and attempted to provide aid while waiting for emergency responders. Not only does Michael fully cooperate with law enforcement, but he also has a solid alibi and witness testimony supporting his account. Additionally, there is no forensic evidence linking Michael to the crime. Still, detectives can't rule out Michael just yet, as there are no other suspects and nobody had seen anyone outside of Michael enter or leave the building. But this is when police receive footage from a nearby Ring doorbell camera, a crucial piece of evidence that would turn the entire case upside down. When the cops looked at the footage, they saw Michael come running out of the home, trying to wake up the neighbors and call for help. This was exactly what he told them he had done, which confirms the fact that he was likely only a witness to all of this. But the camera also picks up someone else at the scene, a strange male figure wearing gloves, but finding out who this could be was difficult. As they began looking into her life, there were very few people who wanted to hurt her. She was on good terms with her family and friends and had almost no enemies. So police began to believe that this may have been a case of one of Amie's past relationships coming back to haunt her. But yet again, almost all of her boyfriends came up clean. All but one of them, Gareth Pursehouse, a man who was reported by Amie's friends to be an obsessive ex-lover and someone who had previously stalked her. But before officers look into Gareth, they decide to consolidate all of the evidence they have first. Because of the presence of the syringe filled with pure nicotine, detectives believe that whoever broke into Amie's apartment intended to kill her by injecting her with the syringe, but that their plan somehow went awry. Amie began resisting, and a physical altercation occurred that would be proven by a black rosary that Amie had been wearing around her neck. Beads of this rosary were found trailing all the way from her bedroom to the balcony. Not only that, a black leather jacket that was turned inside out was also discovered at the scene. It is likely that the attacker snuck up behind her, grabbed her by her jacket, and a struggle ensued. Officers began looking for somebody who would want to hurt Amie in this manner. Undeniably, the masked individual was responsible for the murder. However, identifying them could be challenging because, despite being a well-known public figure, Amie had no no known enemies. Police start their investigation by questioning friends and family of Amie, looking for any clues on who could have committed this heinous crime, and it wouldn't take long for them to get a strong lead. Amie's friends revealed to police that about a month before her murder, they began receiving concerning messages from Amie. She expressed fear for her life, mentioning that she had recently encountered a stalker. A stalker which, it would turn out, she had an abusive relationship with a decade prior. 41-year-old photographer Gareth Pursehouse. On a therapy event Amie attended, they dated briefly, but Amie's friends took note of the relationship being far from normal. In May of 2011, Amie tried to file a restraining order for the abuse she suffered in the relationship. Gareth often suffocated her, slamming her against the walls, dropped her on the ground, and punched her. Yet, somehow, this order was denied, as authorities believed there was a lack of evidence. Of course, this meant a quick end to the relationship, at least for Amie. This was unacceptable for Gareth, as he started obsessing heavily over Amie, and his emotional state worsened. But Amie was the one who'd have to face the brunt of Gareth's mental decline. In the months after the breakup, weird occurrences began happening at Amie's residence. She would walk into her home to find picture frames were smashed. Sometimes there would be roses taped to her front door, and on other occasions, Gareth would refuse to leave her doorstep for hours. A year later, in 2012, Amie tried to file another restraining order against Gareth because he had once again assaulted her and dragged her out of a car. Fortunately, this time, the order would be approved by a judge, barring Gareth from seeing Amie for 5 years. However, according to her closest friends, Gareth's behavior became even more creepy and intense in the years after the restraining order was issued. If Gareth couldn't see her physically, he'd tarnish her reputation on every one of Amie's social media pages. Every single time she posted, she would get derogatory comments, and all of her publications in her field as a therapist would get bombarded with comments criticizing and degrading her work. But things would take a turn for the worst 1 month before Amie's murder. On January 17, 2020, Amie was attending the XBiz Awards, where she was a panelist of an organization called Pineapple Support, which was meant to focus on therapy related to workers in the sex industry. However, as Amie was having drinks before her segment began, she would hear a familiar voice. Gareth's voice, who was working as a photographer at the event. At this point in time, Amie had not seen Gareth in nearly a decade, yet he would approach Amie, angry and upset, saying that she ruined his life. One of Amie's friends would outline what the two talked about as Amie called him for help.
The first phone call, when she called, I couldn't hear. It was a lot of loud commotion. It was chaotic. So I couldn't understand, and I hung up. And then 30 seconds later, I received another phone call from her as well. And all I could hear amongst the chaos or the sounds that were sort of the loud sounds was, "Get the F over here." You initially seen them walk away. I first checked in with my friend who called me, and she told me, "This guy is freaking out on your friend." So I then walked over to where the two of them had walked to, and as I was walking towards them, the only words I heard was, "Ruin my life, you bitch."
After this event, Amie was extremely scared of Gareth and told friends and family that if anything happened to her, Gareth would be responsible, and he had sent her voice messages after the event.
I have so much I need to say. Please give me a chance to just say it. Please.
And her concerns were proven to be true, because when officers matched a picture of Gareth to the man seen on the Ring doorbell footage on the night of the murder, it was an exact match. But for authorities to be sure that Gareth is the same man they're looking for, they needed to search his home. Obtaining the warrant itself was not hard, because the sheer amount of evidence against Gareth gave officers reasonable suspicion to do so. However, this suspicion would soon turn into shock, as syringes filled with nicotine were discovered in Gareth's home, exactly like the one found on Amie's balcony. Not only that, but Gareth himself had sustained injuries on his body and had bloody clothes scattered all over the home. But there was one piece of evidence that proved to be a definitive breakthrough in this case. A DNA comparison between the fingernail scrapings of Amie's body and Gareth would turn up an exact match. Detectives knew that this was exactly the man they were looking for. So by
people were posting like crazy hate, and there's like, why bother?
So you said you're not getting out?
Correct.
Ever? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes. I've seen what's coming at me, and it's not good. I'm not getting out. Super fun.
Gareth Pursehouse has made it very clear that he believes he is going down for Amie's murder, and he has completely accepted that. He would not be speaking this way. Despite this, Gareth was bonded out of jail before his trial began, but Gareth was certainly panicking, because right after he was released on bond, the first place he visited was Los Angeles International Airport to escape the country. Normally, a person who has their bond posted is not allowed next to any airports or borders to prevent them from leaving the country, and if they're found doing so, they're arrested immediately and given no chance for a second bond. Exactly what would happen to Gareth as he was arrested once more. The trial of Gareth Pursehouse began in August of 2023. The defense claimed that Gareth was only there to talk to Amie and that her death was an accident. They also argued that while Gareth had brought that syringe filled with nicotine to the scene, he had only intended it to be used for his own side. But the prosecution took a different approach and painted Gareth as an obsessive killer.
She rejected his advances.
Throughout the entire trial, Gareth Pursehouse never once took the stand to testify on his own behalf. Most legal experts will say that this is something that can be very telling to a jury. After all, if an innocent person has nothing to hide, then it is suspicious that he wouldn't speak out to defend himself. But whether or not the jury in this case will see things his way, only time will tell. After finishing the deliberation process, the jury in this case reached their decision in September of 2023.
That's count one. With the jury, the above entitled action finding defendant, Gareth Pursehouse, guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, are these your verdicts? So say you one, so say you all. Yes. Thank you.
And just like that, Gareth Pursehouse was officially convicted of the murder of Amie Harwick. The only thing left was for Gareth to finally be sentenced. Gareth Pursehouse was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.